right, hello wine drinking people. Today is Tuesday, October 26th, getting ready for our Antinori dinner tonight at Solita Restaurant. I'll tell you all about that tomorrow and what I drank yesterday. And today, I'm trying to get caught up, man. We're doing so much drinking here at the Wine Watch. I'm going to sell you what I drank last night. Oh, well, we only got one video today because the Dalforno review is going to be what I drank last night. The second one, but we do have a lovely offering on Krug champagnes, and it just so happens we did a dinner with Olivier Krug on Saturday night, so it kind of fits into what I'm trying to sell you today, what I drank last night. And wow, what a fabulous event. Krug being my absolute most favorite champagne in the world. And the funny thing about Krug is that we found out on Saturday night everybody has got a Krug story, whether it's the first time they had it or just a moment in their life when they wanted to celebrate and they decided that only the best would do, and Krug is simply the very best. And my story begins at a restaurant I was managing, East City Grill, and I actually had a customer that was, I had to tell he couldn't smoke a cigar out there, so he decided to stab me in the face with it. And a long story short, I sued him and won $3,008,000. And the day that the jury awarded me that money, or that judgment, I went out that night and drank vintage Krug all night long. I must have had 4 bottles of vintage Krug everywhere I stopped. I had a bottle, 4 different places, and I woke up the next morning with a pretty wicked hangover because I think I was drinking other things in addition to the Krug. And somebody told me that 90% of people that get judgments in the state of Florida never collect a dime, and still have not collected 1 dime on that judgment. But man, that's my Krug story. And we had a great night on Saturday night, and another great Krug story with Olivier Krug. His family has owned Krug for the last 150 years. Oops, I'm sorry, they don't own it anymore. LMVH owns Krug now, but the family still runs it, and it's very important. Olivier told us the story about when he came to work for Krug. His father told him, okay, Olivier, it's time for you to learn about Krug, and it'll take you the next 15 years for us to train you. And that's one of the most important things about the champagne business, is getting to know the taste of the product. And one of the things that's unique about Krug champagne is they do not call the Grand Cuvée non-vintage. Non-vintage is a term that the rest of the champagne world uses to describe their entry-level product, their Brut NV, which is usually a blend of like 3 years. Well, Krug has a selection of 200 to 250 different wines that they use every year, different vineyard sites, different plots within that vineyard sites that they vinify separately, and then they go back and taste through all those and decide which ones are going to be used in the Grand Cuvée, which ones are going into vintage. And of course, Clos de Menil, which is, used to be their most expensive wine. Sorry, the Ambonnet wine is even more expensive than Clos de Menil now. But this is a single vineyard wine, the only single vineyard wine that they do at Krug. And then, the Ambonnet, also a single vineyard wine. So they do 2 single vineyard wines. But we did this wine first, which is kind of interesting because you usually save the money wine, the most expensive wine, for last. Usually that's considered the best. But Olivier said the Clos de Menil is the easiest wine to make because it's 1 vineyard and it's 1 vintage. And usually they blend, as I mentioned, several different vintages together, and then up to 250 different lots they choose from every year. So the master blender is really the most important part of what they do at Krug to make these wines, this multi-vintage cuvee, similar every time they produce a batch. What's unique about Krug? Well, Krug barrel ferments their wines, and predominantly Pinot Noir dominated cuvées. So there's not too many producers that barrel ferment the wines. They treat it like a great white Burgundy, and then they age it for longer than other companies do, longer than they have to. The 1998, their current release on their vintage champagne, which 1998 was a very warm year, very good for Chardonnay. This is one of the only vintages that this wine is predominantly Chardonnay in the cuvee. All right, well, let's get to the food. Are you kidding me? Chef Mark Militello's now Trina. And in addition to the menu items that we selected, I wanted to have those George Blanc potato fritters, one of my favorite things that Mark does, and they were spot on. And the conch with the black bean sauce with the vanilla rum butter, outstanding. And great compliments to the champagne. But we did start with the Clos de Menil. As I mentioned before, that's 100% 1 vineyard. It's 100% Chardonnay. And his grandfather said, never make this wine a single wine because you do not want to make the place important. What is important is the cuvee, is the blend. But I guess the first vintage of it, 1981, the wine was just so stunning they had to make it by itself. And the rest is history. This wine has become quite a phenomenon. I believe it was Don Henley that wanted this wine for his wedding, and he bought up the entire supply in the United States of America to serve it at this event. And there's been a lot of other famous people that have loved Krug. Well, I'm one of them. And then we had the 1998 next. The 1998 vintage, which I mentioned before, this was a great vintage for Chardonnay-based champagne. So this was one of the only years that Chardonnay was made up predominantly the blend. And this wine has got lovely exotic toasty oak spice on the nose, lovely richness, hints of brioche, dried flowers, and a very refined taste, incredible balance, and length on the finish. Next up, we had the Rosé from Krug. You know, you'd think these wines are very rare. When you say 500,000 bottles is their total production a year, it was funny because I asked Olivier this, and he said, I can tell you that we make 500,000 bottles, and that's it. But I can't tell you the production. Well, he looked in my notes. I've had it in there. My notes that they made 500,000 bottles. Duh. But production probably a little different today. They make 27 million bottles a year at Moet Chandon, so quite a difference in terms of supply. The United States is a very small customer of Krug. We only buy 10% of the total production. Hey, Japan buys twice as much. How many people do they got over there? I mean, but Krug has always been a wine for collectors and connoisseurs. And, you know, Olivier said the next event we do together, I want to do an event with collectors that have never tasted Krug before, because it is a revelation the first time that you have it. Well, the Rosé had this lovely, pretty strawberry fruit, raspberry coulis, and notes of dry, candied ginger spice to it, hints of pepper and spice. This wine was outstanding with the tuna that we had that had a little spice to it. A really nice complement to spicy food, rosé champagnes. And then the Grand Cuvée we finished with. Well, actually started with the Grand Cuvée and we finished with the Grand Cuvée. And the pork belly, very nice with the Grand Cuvée here. And as I mentioned before, close to 200, 250 different wines used to make up this assemblage. Hey, in vintages where they don't make Clos de Menil, it goes into the Grand Cuvée. So this wine has got a lovely kind of ginger, candied fruit note, marzipan, exotic spices on the nose, and wonderful richness, and at the same time a wonderful light, fresh finish. Very balanced and incredibly long. But hey, four champagnes, that's not enough. I also brought a few extra things. Hey, how many times do you get to dine with Olivier Krug? We had the 1966 Loire Chapelle Chambertin. This was the star of our vintage Burgundy dinner a couple of weeks ago. And hey, it just happened to be Olivier's birth year. The wine singing, absolutely drinking beautifully. And then the 2000 Chateau Yquem. This is part of the LMVH portfolio, so I thought it was appropriate to bring that in the 2000 vintage. A lesser vintage, but drinking beautiful now. Hey, there is no bad Yquem. If they make it, it is outstanding. And that is what I had to drink on Saturday night at the Krug dinner. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasone, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.